Nostalgia informs our tastes and purchase decisions, sets market trends, and has been a primary driver of the recent boom in remakes and remasters. Everyone has that golden game or two, that one game that you will always look fondly back upon during childhood and teenage life. But as we all know, while some legendary stick with us forever, many great games fall by the wayside and are never really remembered again, despite being undoubtedly special. Today, I am going to visit the top 10 legendary video games that you might have forgotten from ages ago. These little gems might not be top of your mind every day, but are still amazing animals. So let's not waste any time and get right into the list. Max Payne sprung to mind first, as that must have meant a lot at the time. But after 3, it just faded away. Not exactly scrambled memory hole territory though, especially with Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes inbound. But there is another game with bullet time mechanics and a wisecracking if much less serious protagonist that hasn't received the same love: Dead to Rights. Mostly, however, Dead to Rights the First is one of the better entries in the franchise, mixing a smooth combo of goofy action, decent puzzles, John Woo-style executions, and humor in ways that don't always hit but are wild to play through. It wasn't some mega hit, but it was still popular enough that you could usually see the box art in video game shops. There was an okay sequel, an even more decent PSP spin-off, and a crazy remake that I liked. Sadly, none of those titles ever took off quite like the original game did, and the franchise fizzled out despite some of the best action gameplay ever. Long before superhero active video games, like Marvel's Spider-Man and the Batman Arkham Collection, ruled the day, we had Prototype, the best open-world fantastically sport a superpower-style killer swarm. You play as Alex Mercer, an amnesiac shapeshifter with the face of what every edgy teenage Facebook profile pic looked like a decade ago, and the game sees you ravaging Manhattan during a mysterious virus outbreak. The powers Alex possesses, zipping through the city faster than a speeding bullet, the various ways Alex can explore the city are super fun. There are some comic book aspects, like its symbiote-like powers, that help give it a unique flavor that stands out in the game. For a fun story with an unexpectedly grim ending that continued on to its sequel. However, despite being a massive hit, the sequel just didn't build on what the first game did, and the franchise is now long gone from the zeitgeist. Regardless, anyone who showed up to actually play it knows how brilliant both Prototype were. The second one could have benefited from a better story, of course. It was a technically accomplished game for the time, and Destruction Derby had a damaged engine that directly mapped the damage done to your car to the way you drove, in terms of physics. Astonishingly, the game could present as many as 20 cars on the screen at the same time, with little to no frame rate slowdown running on the PS1's weak hardware. Not only do players compete against each other in races, but also in demolition derbies, where the aim is to smash through rivals, demolish their vehicles, and stay alive in the wreckage. Destruction Derby 2 improved on everything great about the first game, with enhancements in graphics, smoother gameplay, and more extensive damage physics. The crashes were ever more brutal. The tracks featured a bit more variety, as ramps and jumps added a degree of foolery to the ensuing races. Demolition derbies became more intensive, with new modes and ever tougher AI brought to the game. Other than that, it was a solid, ball-gobbling chapter that expanded the original just enough to be fun without much crashing.
It's the final lap!
Alice Madness Returns was the follow-up to American McGee's Alice, which I think most people don't even know the first game exists, but we'll skip that for now. While an otherwise unremarkable hack and slash, Alice Madness Returns drew unexpected notoriety through its distinctive horror-themed ambiance and gothic visual style. The writing is great, with a little more of the nightmarish world in which Alice resides being slowly revealed as you go, and a genuinely haunting climax that fits in well with what is otherwise a generally less than morally uplifting game. Even having written up a design document and fighting tooth and nail to bring an action sequel to life, the creators' hands were tied by an unresponsive EA, thus killing the franchise once and for all. It's a single-player game that most people finished well over 10 years ago.
At least the place I've landed is somewhat familiar.
About time too, Alice.
Blasted cat. Don't try to bully me. I'm very much on edge.
Perfect. When you're not on edge, you're taking up too much space.
Anyone on the internet in the past 10 years or so probably remembers the Can It Run Crysis meme, a point of reference that became popular even among those who had no intention of ever playing the game. The Crysis series was well known for its stunning graphics, engaging first-person shooting, and the various powers inherent in the player's suit, all of which were satisfying to try on the game's many foes, including the aliens, of course. Nothing special about the first, other than that it functioned as a tech demo of sorts, and how difficult that was for PCs to run. Yes, but the second one was very good and the best in the franchise, and the third one was also pretty awesome if not quite that good. It's relatively millions-made triplet wrapped up, and then the franchise was simply left alone. A rare occurrence in this system hat back here. Then again, EA has this fetching set of shorts made to smother good games and human aspirations. So not exactly stunning, and not that a whole era hole has developed with no clue Crysis even existed. Killzone is from a time when Sony had lots of franchises to fill up a big library, and most of those were somewhere between serviceable and mediocre. The first game is set on a post-apocalyptic Earth in the fictional year 2357, following a nuclear conflict that made much of the planet uninhabitable. As a result, we have a handful of states now running the property of humanity, and they are permanently threatening each other with war. Killzone's premise is perfect. You rarely see a futuristic world that isn't set in space, but none of them ever took off quite in the same way as Gears of War, Call of Duty, or the Metro games. Still, all of that produced 4 mainline games and 2 spin-offs, which is quite the haul for a series that has essentially been relegated to the proverbial has-been hotel. Killzone probably won't hit the nostalgia beacons for everyone these days, but some of us fondly recall its thin plot and great shooting. Still, all of that produced 4 mainline games and 2 spin-offs, which is quite the haul for a series that has essentially been relegated to the proverbial has-been hotel. Killzone probably won't hit the nostalgia beacons for everyone these days, but some of us fondly recall its thin plot and great shooting.
What the hell? Enemy
The
in
Hellgast
sight!
is hiding in here.
Part of me hurts to put Ninja Gaiden on the list because, whether it's the NES games or the Xbox 360 ones, it was a genre-defining series of action-adventure video games that always pushed the envelope when it came to nuts gameplay and fun stories while kicking ass. And well, you're a ninja, so the character is just automatically awesome. The Sigma versions of the games have seemed divisive among the masses, but all up to the OG Ninja Gaiden 2 are considered some of the finest action experiences you'll be able to have in this medium. Unfortunately though, the franchise moved from strength to strength throughout the early 90s, and up towards the last couple of games in the late 2000s. The last attempt to push forward the franchise came in the form of a spin-off, Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z, which most players, including myself, agreed that it was a bit bland and it continued to drive the last nail in its coffin. Ninja Gaiden seems unlikely to enter the conversation very often these days, which is a shame, and it sounds like Tecmo Koei isn't going to do much to paint it back into the picture, and probably can't. Now with the peak of the Souls genre, we need a return of Ninja Gaiden, to lay the claim to the best, hardest swords-based Japanese game once again. Godhand is probably the most out-there title on this list, and that makes it a classic all to itself. Can go from casino boners to giant robots with dumb massive batteries strapped to their ass, and you can unlock moves and abilities that you can unlock. The punchline, if we could call it that, however, is that once again Godhand communicates the ludicrous mood both in play and in general, thanks to the humor, or lack of, found in its gameplay itself, visual design, and story. It is slightly clunky and very challenging in the beginning. However, once you immerse yourself headlong into this bizarre realm abound with otherworldly occurrences and certain special abilities are obtained, it is quite enjoyable. In particular, the boss fights are an especially great time thing. Despite its charm, Godhand took a bath and never received a sequel. It's a shame Capcom never even so much as fought to get its remake ported or remastered. Consequently, it is something of a hidden gem for part of the PlayStation player base from a certain console generation. However, even with some rarity, you won't stop hearing about it from time to time because of its strange charm. If I could have a Zapper sauna and ask Capcom to remake or remaster one game, God's Hand would be it. Jade Empire is one of the most interesting games you'll ever play, and one BioWare's best. The game is based in a fantasy world located in a steampunk environment, but what truly makes the game unique amongst others is the Asian-centric design. Martial arts are the order of the day here, and the game's characters are so full of personality you could drown in the details of its world. Jade Empire is a full-blown RPG capable of better dialogue choices that can also change the story and gameplay many ways over, giving it replayability as well. The morality system is especially fun, adding a fresh feel and rewards to each playthrough. Even after its critical acclaim, Jade Empire remains stranded on the original Xbox, PC, and mobile. Unfortunately, a sequel is but a pipe dream, and that's such a shame, as this game is probably unlike any other, bringing a great, unique, oriental feel to everything.
Hold your tongue, old man. This village is ours.
You will fall now.
Be careful, these lads will show no mercy.
Brutal Legend is a one-of-a-kind action-adventure, recognized purely by the absurdity of its concept and the amount of known property involved. The titular lead, Jack Black, traverses a world saturated in heavy metal dom, and while not necessarily serious in plot, it still does enough to pull you into the characters and their world. And Jack Black isn't the only high-profile voice actor involved in this game. It also boasts appearances from legends Tim Curry and Ozzy Osbourne. The hack-and-slash real-time strategy hybridization, which, if you think about it long enough, starts to make sense, but also sounds weird in practice. Sadly, it never got the attention it deserved and remained one of those more or less lost classics, even at the time, that hardly anyone knew of. Even more niche than it is now, but special for folk who played it. Alternatively, this combination did put off players, and I vaguely recall this running kinda poorly on minimum spec PCs, like my old PC, in the first place. But with all these problems, Brutal Legend was still a stupidly good time, even when you were one of the less relaxed players happy to overlook its eccentricities. Sadly, it never really got the attention it deserved, and ended up as one of those more or less unknown classics, even back then, that very few ever knew about. Back then, it was even more niche than it is now, but for the players, it was special. Sadly, it never got the attention it deserved, and remained one of those more or less lost classics, even at the time, that hardly anyone knew of. Even more niche than it is now, but special for folk who played it.
Close your eyes. Be still.
And that's it. The top 10 legendary games you may have forgotten about. Hopefully, a couple of these titles helped refresh your memory. But if you're anything like me, I'm sure there was at least more than one that you completely forgot about until right now. It was fun to revisit these titles. Although a few of us didn't know they might never reach the level of fame of other legendary we played, there they were still existing in their little bubble in our hearts, and being legends in their own right. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if I missed any gems you've spotted. As always, you see the next video soon.